And colleagues, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in opposition to this amendment to the Fiscal Year 18 National Defense Authorization Act offered by my friend and colleague, Mr. McClintock of California, that would strike a bipartisan provision that clarifies that the Fiscal Year 18 National Defense Authorization Act does not authorize a round of base realignment and closures, otherwise known as BRAC. After nearly 13 hours of debate in the Armed Services Committee, my colleagues and I on the Armed Services Committee came together and overwhelmingly approved language in the final mark that prevented a BRAC for the next fiscal year. We passed that vote by a vote of 60-1. Now, many of my colleagues have argued that past BRACs eliminated excess infrastructure in the nation's military or streamlined defense spending, but it's just not the case, Mr. Speaker. And earlier this year, Secretary Mattis testified to the Armed Services Committee on the need to reassess our military's current infrastructure resources and needs before closing or realigning any current resources. The Fiscal Year 16 National Defense Authorization Act required an updated DoD forces structure plan and infrastructure inventory. To date, the DoD has not submitted the required infrastructure report. Quite simply, we may not have enough capacity and infrastructure to meet our current needs and our needs going forward as we look at the threats coming from Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, the threat of global terrorism, and transnational criminal organizations. Who knows what threat we will face tomorrow? And the Secretary of Defense, I hope, will work with us to reassess our current capacity, and the need to halt realignments and closures, to give him time to do so, is all the more important. Without outdated capacity information, there's simply no reason to close, or with outdated capacity information, there's simply no reason to close or realign an installation just to repurchase or rebuild a new one just a few years down the road. It's fiscally irresponsible in terms of defense spending and meeting our needs moving forward. While I have nothing but respect for my colleague from California and fought many fights to get rid of waste and cut government spending with him, this is just one that I can't support you on. I hope that my colleagues will join me in voting against Mr. McClintock's broken bucket amendment.